Today we're going to be talking about how to make your first 100K in your 20s. So, just for background's sake, we all worked at the same company, which is tech recruiting in the staffing industry. We're all very fortunate that we were able to achieve this goal in our early 20s. So, in some sense, I feel like we have an idea of what it takes to get there, how we got there. We can definitely talk about that, and our peers and colleagues that got there as well, kind of share our thoughts and take on how you can achieve the same if that is your goal. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So maybe I'll flip it to you, Steve, to kick us off. Your opinion in your 20s, fresh out of school.
Where would you go?
What would you do? What do you have to do to make that first 100K?
I think we've always had this chat, but top of mind is, and a lot of people think about it, is in the finance world, iBanking, right? Like iBanking is like usually fresh out of university, guaranteed 6 figures. I mean, I went to school for accounting. Accounting, they don't really talk about the money piece. I feel like no one goes for the money in accounting. You go for security, and you go for the prestige of having a CPA beside your name or a couple letters and working for the Big Four. And but not once did any of my friends in accounting, or like myself included, think about, I'm going to be in this industry to be rich. No, you go there for more or less stability, being an immigrant, having immigrant parents, like you want to make them proud. So you want, if you're not a lawyer, doctor, then
that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So iBanking first comes to mind, and then obviously sales.
You know what? I didn't even think of sales as a corporate career coming out of university.
No one does. I think they don't teach, if you go to universities here in Canada, I don't think anyone teaches you to go to sales. 100%, in my opinion.
No, there's no educational program when it comes to sales.
Well, they don't advertise that as a career.
That's true
at
too.
all.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays, and even back then, we knew, but we didn't really know. To be honest, I can speak on my behalf. Would love to hear what you guys think, but I didn't know tech had that much money. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Neither did I know.
I didn't know.
No clue.
I didn't think, to be honest, I didn't even think it was possible to make 100K coming out of university being that young. In my first interview, I remember our boss at the time asked me, what's my goal? I was like, in 5 years, I hope I'm in a position where I'm making 100K. And I just didn't know that in tech, that didn't really mean you're making a lot. That gets thrown around. 100K is not much in tech.
Yeah, if anything, nowadays, people that are in tech, like devs and stuff like that, if they're really good at what they do, getting recruited to Silicon Valley and stuff, out of University of Waterloo, they're asking probably for 120, 150, 170 even, fresh out of university, and you're just like, whoa. Yeah. And that's something accounting, being a business grad, you don't really get exposure to. But I'm grateful now being in the tech recruiting space, and I'm happy I chose that path, is it opens your eyes, because it opens your eyes and
to what's out there,
and what careers are out there, seeing what careers we've seen and the career trajectories to get there. There's more than one way. There's no right or wrong way to get there, right? There's certain ways that will expedite it, but that's my opinion on, I would say, 100K.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially if your goal is to get there in your 20s and you're looking to accelerate your path to that 6-figure income. Tech, for sure. iBanking, for sure. If you had to name a third, what do you think? In your 20s. And I'm not thinking, and I'm sure our listeners aren't thinking in your late 20s, in your early 20s. Earlier the better. So early, mid-20s, ideally.
You're talking about career path though, right?
It could be anywhere.
Or the other one's all probably entrepreneurship, something to do with e-commerce or online social media marketing, something like that. Those are, I personally don't know it well enough, but I know that there's definitely money out there in that specific field, and barriers to entries are low,
very
relatively
low.
Speaking.
Yeah.
So. For me, I would say that, job types and job industries aside, there's only two ways to make 100K in your early 20s. The first way, in a very highly specialized skill set, whatever that is. So tech could be one of them, iBanking is one of them, very specialized skill set. Or the second way is having some sort of compensation that is unlimited potential. So whether that is sales, whether that is entrepreneurship, it's uncapped compensation dependent on the amount of work that you do. And those are the only two ways that I see you can get to six figures in your early 20s.
Yep. Yeah, totally get that. So broadly speaking, conceptually, two ways really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you can be highly specialized in a niche where you're really good at that one thing that you do and you get paid a really good amount of money to do it.
Yep.
Or you find leverage by building like a business system, like you said, entrepreneurship, or creating some sort of system where your income isn't necessarily attached to your inputs.
Yes.
Right? So
exactly.
Yeah, no.
So sales, entrepreneurship, all those things that are uncapped and you're not limited, because once you put a fixed salary on something, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how well you do, you're going to be fixed to that compensation all the time. But if it's sales or if it's entrepreneurship, the more essentially entrepreneurship also just boils down to sales. You're selling a product or a service. At the end of the day, you just get a bigger piece of the pie when you're an entrepreneur versus a salesperson working for another person. So,
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to challenge that a little bit though, because I feel like, broadly speaking, there's only two ways you can say that. But if I were a listener and I was like, okay, I want to choose a career path.
yep.
I want a career that gets me there. Your top three, like what would that be?
Top three, definitely technology, sales, and entrepreneurship. Those are like, for me, what I would choose.
Yeah.
And those three career paths are open enough whether you can have a lot of choice within those three sections.
So if I were to choose tech,
Yeah.
let's drill down to that, because not every position in tech pays the same.
That's true. That's true too.
Right. Which path gets me there fastest?
I would say you have to be some sort of builder. So whether you're a designer or whether you're a developer or something along those lines of building something, and you having a really good skill set in it is probably the path I would go. I would go UX, or a graphic designer, UX designer, or a software developer.
Those are good paths, I'd say.
Yeah,
But there's a lot more.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I've come to learn there's a lot more, and like one thing that I always forget, like people like data scientists, right? Like they're very specialized.
That's true too.
They're just analyzing.
But can you be a data scientist fresh out of school?
Yeah, you can.
How long does it take to get
100%
there?
you can.
Yeah, you can.
100% you
You
can.
If you have the right educational background, you can become a data scientist fairly quickly.
Talking about physics, a lot of like physics degrees, math, stats.
Yep.
Programming even.
Yep.
And then a lot of bio. I've seen bio. I've seen people move from non-traditional hardcore tech education background, come from like a bio space, and then go
into
down that
data
road.
science. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And that's like one of the newest job types
Definitely
for
a new
sure. But you can definitely do it straight out of school. You can like just jump into data science and then be able to make six figures.
In your early mid-20s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've seen it multiple times.
Yeah, I genuinely didn't know. Just curious.
Yeah.
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 What do you think, Terrance? What would you say top 3 ways?
I'm not. I mean, to be honest, I'm trying to think of ways to like veer off from what you guys already said. But it's tough.
It's tough.
It's tough.
So why? So side question then, like why is 100K like the number?
I think part
To
of
you
it
guys.
is just it's a round number. It's a nice, clean, round number that people
No,
like.
James, you come from a smaller town, right?
Yeah.
Like you're born and raised outside of the GTA, like outside of Toronto, one's in a smaller town,
Yeah.
well-known town. But
Yep.
what was that the same perception?
Yeah,
versus
it
big
was.
city?
It seemed not impossible, but far enough of a target that you can use it as motivation. So like anything below 100K was just it did seem like it could be attainable pretty easily and like without much hard work, but 100K in itself was such a like a far-reaching goal, but it didn't seem impossible either. And so that's why I had that goal in mind for myself, because I like to challenge myself a little bit and see like, oh, here's a goal that like it's not impossible. It would take a lot of hard work, but it's definitely doable.
Right on.
For me, it was just it seemed like a pretty large number at the time. I honestly, I think even among our friend group, it was just like it didn't seem possible to be making that sort of money that young. Six figures just sounded like a pretty
Right?
large
Sounds
number.
nice. It sounds nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Sounds like a nice number.
And it was just, I don't know, it just seemed so far out of reach. And you got to think back to like when we came out of school too. I mean, like when was that?
2013, 2014.
That was like the whole social media era where people were making millions off of videos. Like that didn't really, it was just starting. It didn't really exist. Like some were, but it wasn't like now where there's a lot of people making like insane amount of money off of like being a TikTok content creator or influencer. Like those weren't real career paths or options that you could like realistically consider. Right. So back then it was more like the traditional things that you could do to make money after university. And in school, we weren't really taught, anything else aside from business, like the typical, hey, you go into operations, you go into finance, accounting, and none of those career paths aside from my banking were like, oh yeah, you're going to make six figures. It was more like you're going to have job stability. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that didn't seem real to me unless you got into like an executive position. And then, I mean, here comes tech. I was like, oh, all right. Here we go.
It was one of the things in our lifetime that was such a new thing, and it was a booming industry, and a lot of money was being put into it.
Yeah.
And so that was been the focus for such a long time. The technology is the future. Automation, AI, all these things are going to help us and humanity out. And people were spending billions and billions of dollars into it. And so we were, at the time, in a really good spot to be able to leverage that.
Yeah. I feel like it was like every other week there was an IPO and things were just going crazy.
Everything was going to the moon.
Yeah.
Everything was going to the moon. Billion-dollar valuations.
Unicorns were happening left and right. So
yeah.
It was a good time to get into that space at that time.
What would you guys think is, I'm sure a lot of people are like, when we talk about specialized skills, like not everyone, like everyone theoretically could be a developer. Everyone can be an entrepreneur, but that may not necessarily apply to everyone, right? Like that may not be the easiest route. In your opinion, guys, like what do you think would be the easiest realistic route to someone that, came out of school without not knowing what they're doing, and they're not specialized right now? Which routes would you think is
Sales. Yeah.
Because
that's what we took, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's back to the high level concept, right? You're removing yourself from like hourly inputs to earn an hourly wage, and without having to take on full risk to be an entrepreneur, you can have a base salary and then you can earn commission to make up that difference between your salary and that six-figure goal. And in tech especially, like you can close large enough deals over 12 months that get you there pretty early.
It's low barrier too.
Low barrier to entry.
Very low barrier to entry.
Well, what skills do you need though? What are the skills, like being from an employer hiring sales, and what we've seen from our peers? Like, what are some key skills that you think salespeople need to be successful? Because everyone can theoretically do sales. You could talk, you can do sales maybe, but what are some key ones?
Communication skills, obviously, that's an important one. But I feel like even if you're not a strong communicator out the gates, you get into that career, you start to develop that skill set, right? You flex those muscles enough, you're going to get stronger at it. I think it depends on which kind of sales you're getting into, because there's relationship-based selling and then there's like actual skill-based selling where you need to know for example, SaaS. I'm going to say SaaS, right? You need to know SaaS. Like that requires technical knowledge. You need to be able to speak to the technologies, how it solves certain problems, but to do that effectively, you need to be able to pick up on tech. That's a skill set. You need to be able to pick up on that. But like if you're not that type of person that can, I don't know, read up on tech and pick up on certain things within the technical industry because it just doesn't interest you, then you're going to have a hard time selling in that space. Whereas in relationship-based selling, you just need to be a good person, spend a lot of time with people, build those customer relationships, and then like that could be like the make or break for you in terms of like a successful sales career. You have good relationships, that people are going to buy from you because they just like you.